Now we're looking at the grammar presentation on page 17. Make it bigger. All right, simple past tense is for an action that was finished in the past and is no longer happening. For example, we have Weinlich needed to find a bride. That means he does not need a bride now, to find a bride now because he's found her, he's married. He advertised on the internet. He did this in the past before he found his bride. He said he thinks commitment is important. Okay, he said this is in the past. The second verb, thinks, is in the present tense because he still thinks this is true now. They talked briefly on that day and again on Tuesday when Runza turned in the completed survey. All of those are events that took place in the past. Okay, the past progressive or past continuous is for an action that was in progress when another thing happened in the past. And notice that the past progressive is used in contrast with another verb in the simple past. And the simple past verb may be just stated or implied. So as the date was getting closer, Weinlich knew he had to do something. Okay, during the time when the date was getting closer, Weinlich realized he had to do something. My parents met when they were studying in high school. During the time when they were studying, they met each other. Their meeting came during the time when they were studying. Okay. She was looking for someone really special, and in this case, the simple past verb is implied. During the time when she was looking for someone special, she read the application from Kunze. Okay, used to is for an action that was continued or repeated in the past. Arranged marriages used to be common in Europe, but they're not now. And this custom continued for a long time in the past. It gradually disappeared during the 1800s, and it is not a custom in Europe now. I used to walk to school when I was a child, means I did this many times in the past. I used to be afraid of the dentist. This means I was afraid of the dentist for a period of time in the past, but I'm not afraid of the dentist anymore. Okay. When the past time with would is for an action that was repeated in the past. And note that for a repeated action, past with would and past with used to mean the same thing. However, would is not used for continued action, only for a repeated action. When friends asked Weinlich when he was going to tie the knot, he would say he didn't know. So his friends asked him this again and again in the past. Every time they asked him, he said he didn't know. Okay. He would often walk to school when he was a child, or I would often walk to school when I was a child. I did this many times in the past. Some days she would work for 12 hours. Okay, she did this sometimes in the past. I can't quite see this, okay. Every time I got a low grade, I would become discouraged. Okay, that means I became discouraged repeatedly in the past. And it implies that the low grades don't make me discouraged anymore. Can't seem to get that big again. There we go. It's going kind of slow. Get back to where we were here. Okay, the past time is before a time in the past, for an action that took place before another action in the past. And note that many students use the past perfect incorrectly. It seems like people learn the past perfect and then they want to use it all the time. And we only use the past perfect when we're comparing with another action in the simple past. But the simple past action may be stated or implied. So I say, I had studied English in high school before I came to the U.S. You could also say, I studied English in high school before I came to the U.S. The had studied happened before the came. Runza said the day was the most incredible she had ever experienced, so she's referring to other days that happened before the day she was talking about. So there was a day in the past, and then she's talking about other days before that. He had met her before the wedding. Okay, their meeting happened before the wedding. He had met. It implies that he had met her before the wedding took place. Okay, it's also correct to say he met her before the wedding. He hadn't met his bride yet means he hadn't met her yet at the time he planned the wedding. Okay, that part of the simple past is implied and not stated in that sentence. Okay, be careful. Had plus past participle is different from had plus an infinitive. When I say he hadn't met his bride yet, past perfect, so he knew he had to do something. It was necessary for him to do something. Okay, the hadn't met and the had to do something. These hads are completely different kind of meaning. This one is the past perfect, and this one means it was necessary for him to do something. Totally different meaning. Okay, when we talk about a time that happened before a time in the past, we can use the past perfect progressive. This is for an action that continued for a time before the past up until a later time in the past, which may be stated or implied. So I had been studying English for 3 years when I came to the U.S. Means I studied English for 3 years up until the time when I came to the U.S. He had been planning the wedding for months. He had planned the wedding for months, and then he started looking for his bride, and that's implied. He had been pondering marriage, and he had known for some time that he was going to get married in June of 1998. So he had been pondering marriage up until the time this story began. Okay, let's look at some pictures of these verb tenses that we're talking about. When I use the simple past, maybe I'm talking about something that happened one time in the past, now, and future, okay? For example, let's see. He advertised on the internet, happened one time in the past. Or the simple past can be something that happened repeatedly in the past. Okay, like, say if I talk about his friends and family asked him about getting married, that happened again and again. Or the simple past can be something that continued for a while in the past, like he wanted to get married. That continued for a period of time in the past, but is now finished because now he's married. Let's look at the next one, the used to be and the would. Let me find that. Okay, here's used to. Okay, used to can mean this, repeated action in the past, like I used to walk to school when I was a child, or some days she used to work for 12 hours. Or it could be a period of time in the past. I used to be afraid of the dentist. Okay, the past with would. Past with would is talking about repeated action in the past. And if we go back now and look at the used to again, you can see used to can be either this or this. But past with would can only be this. It can, when I use would, I'm not doing this. Okay, now let's look at the past perfect. When I say I had studied English in high school before I came to the U.S. Okay, this is now. I came to the U.S. is in the past. And this happened before. And I use the past perfect. I had studied. Or it could be something that happened repeatedly before another time in the past. Okay, when the day was the most incredible she had ever experienced. Okay, here's now. Here's the day that Runza got married. Okay, and then she had experienced many other days before that. So this one is in the simple past, and that one is in the past perfect. Okay, here's the past perfect progressive. When I say something, I had been studying English for 3 years when I came to the U.S. Here's now. Here's this time in the past when I came to the U.S. using the simple past. And then I've got this period of time before that I had been studying. Okay, let's now think about past time when you're after a time in the past, but before now, or the future in the past. And I think your book shows a confusing way to think about sentences with was, going to, or would in the past tense. And it's much easier to think about this as indirect speech. So I really think you'll understand it better if you think about it this way. You've got the sentence in the reading, he knew that he was going to marry soon. That's all in the past tense, right? You could think about the present tense, a whole different person, maybe George, not Weinlich, but George now. He knows that he is going to marry soon. That's what that sentence looks like in the present tense, but we're talking about Weinlich in the past tense, so it looks like that. Okay, Weinlich, I say he knew when the wedding would be. This is all in the past tense, but say I'm talking about George, who is now not married yet. George, I say he knows when the wedding will be. That's the sentence in the present tense, and that's the sentence in the past tense. Okay, Weinlich, he wasn't sure who his bride would be. There's the sentence in the past tense. Or he isn't sure who his bride will be is the present tense sentence. And then compare again, the past tense. Neither Weinlich nor Runza knew who would ultimately be chosen. Okay, now actually we're talking about George here, so lack of confusion. So I'm going to change that. Neither George nor Mary knows who will ultimately be chosen. That's how the verbs go in the present tense. But this whole story was being told in the past tense, so that's how the verbs turned out. Let's look at this in a picture. When I say Weinlich knew he was going to marry soon, here's the knew is in the past, and was going to is later in the past, but still before now. Again, he knew when the wedding would be. Okay, he knew in the past. The wedding would be later in the past, still before now. Let's compare those past sentences with present sentences. If I'm talking about George now, George knows now he is going to marry soon, or he knows now when the wedding will be. So this is present, future, present, future. But when we talked about Weinlich, the whole story was in the past. So we talked about he knew past about something later in the past, but there's now. He knew in the past something later in the past, but here is now.